Nebraska keeps taking our football players. Let's talk about what's going on right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, I know a lot of people are mixed. Some love Dennis Gates. Some people think that he really can't ever come back from the 0-19 and, well, losing a couple times to double digits in the NCAA tournament. I just don't see how you can be dismissive of him based on what he's accomplished at Missouri at this point. But you know what? Let's start by talking about football, because a somewhat surprising and yet understandable exit from the Mizzou football team yesterday, according to Gerard Hamilton over at PowerMizzou.com, Makai Gbayor, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Makai Gbayor, a linebacker who transferred from Nebraska to Missouri. Well, he's back in the transfer portal. And I said jokingly, Nebraska keeps taking their players. Well, he isn't going back to Nebraska, but I was making reference to, of course, Williams-Nwaneri transferring from Mizzou to Nebraska this offseason. And unfortunately, the Makai Gbayor for Williams-Nwaneri trade is no more, as Gbayor is heading back, well, into the portal. We'll see where he ultimately ends up. A guy who definitely was going to compete for a starting job, I figured was going to be part of a three-man rotation with Tristan Newsom and also Josiah Trotter as well, the transfer from West Virginia. I thought you'd see a couple transfers and the returner. Now, what really threw a wrench into these plans, I think, at least from Makai Gbayor's perspective, is the return of Tristan Newsom. That was not expected this fall, but wait for it. What famous quarterback? Which rule am I going to cite here for the millionth time? Yes, the Diego Pavia rule, baby. It's back into effect once again, and allowing Tristan Newsom, a guy who had played some in junior college, to have surprisingly another year. Nobody really saw that coming, especially when Gbayor decided to enter the portal and come to Missouri, that was going to happen. So Gbayor apparently behind Newsom, I would say, in the rotation. If Gbayor thought, nope, I'm going to get my share of snaps that I was expecting, I imagine he would still be in Columbia, but Gbayor once again looking for another landing spot in the portal. The good news here is if you're Missouri, I thought linebacker, especially when Newsom's unexpected eligibility was granted here for another year, it really did feel like Missouri had an embarrassment of riches at the linebacker position with the returning Khalil Jacobs. Nicholas Rodriguez has been really getting a lot of praise here in spring camp so far after having a fairly significant role as a true freshman last season. Just a lot of interesting names at the linebacker position right now for Missouri. So this is a bit of a blow, sort of like I think Ja'Kai Lang yesterday at another deep position, another talented player at a deep position, but it's not a huge blow at the same time because of that depth, because you have so many options there. Certainly nothing to panic about here. And as Eli Drinkwitz alluded to earlier in the week, well, when one guy comes out, another guy is probably going to be coming in at a similar position. So we'll just have to see at the end of the day, is Missouri a net winner in the spring portal period or not? We'll just have to see. Now, Makai Gbayor, not the only former Tiger entering the portal, although can you really call Makai Gbayor a former Tiger if he never actually took a snap or put on a Mizzou uniform officially? But regardless, somebody who did put on a Missouri uniform, Jamarian Wayne, defensive back who came to Missouri as a wide receiver, I believe, I shouldn't say back into the transfer portal, intends to enter the transfer portal. Again, this according to Gerard Hamilton over at Power Mizzou. Wayne, a kid who bounced around positions, had seen the field a little bit last year, but again, a lot of portal additions at the safety position, probably pushing Jamarian Wayne to a place where he feels like he can maybe get a little bit more playing time. A guy who's been a good teammate, it would seem, and has been patient, waiting for his opportunity. It's kind of hard to blame him and say, oh, well, why aren't you sticking it out yet again when Missouri adds Jalen Catalon, Mose Phillips, and others at the safety position? It's just tough to blame Jamarian Wayne for that one, or from my perspective, to be demanding that he sit out an entire season. Well, I'm not really sure why Jamarian Wayne, for example, needs to be punished. So many fans, I think, who are against the portal and that type of deal, the free movement, focus on, guys who have played in 4 spots in 4 years. We can debate on whether that's a healthy decision or not. The more as time goes along here, I feel like guys should be free to make their own mistakes, if you will. These are young, grown men after all. And speaking of the transfer portal, one guy I've been thinking a decent bit about lately is Aiden Glover, the former Missouri quarterback who entered the transfer portal this past December. And from what I can tell, here recording on April 11th, I don't think Glover has found a landing spot just yet. And the reason I've been thinking about Glover is because he was a kid who came in and everybody knew he was a developmental quarterback prospect. Nobody expected him to be an instant player, even in year 2, that type of deal. He was the guy who was going to redshirt and hopefully compete maybe by year 3 in the system, that type of thing. So for him and Missouri perhaps mutually to decide to move on after year 1, well, maybe that was just a mistake in recruiting, and the fact that he hasn't found an immediate landing spot there is indicative of that. But just in general, I'm thinking if you're a developmental high school quarterback, if you're a guy who has some physical tools but needs time to actually play football, well, why not go somewhere where you can actually play and develop by actually playing instead of being the emergency quarterback and never seeing the field for an entire season? Because here's the thing, the NFL draft is coming up here very soon. The one thing about college to NFL quarterback scouting, one of the few things that seemingly the football community has figured out, is that the more actual football that you've played at the quarterback position, real reps, not just practice reps, but real live bullets in real games, the better chance you have at the next level. Well, I think the counter to, so my point there is that for somebody like Aiden Glover, would it maybe have been better for him to play a season at Bowling Green or something, or Middle Tennessee's from the state of Tennessee, for example? What if he plays at MTSU for a year, or maybe even goes Division II for a year, but is actually a starter? Doesn't mean he's going to be perfect in year 1, but that's the point. He's going to figure out all the things that he needs to work on. He's going to make mistakes and realize in the back of his mind, ooh, there's a throw that I'm never going to make again. There's a window that I'm never going to test again. Much better to do it under that relatively low scrutiny versus in the SEC, or to me, even more importantly, versus not playing in the SEC. The counter to that, of course, is, hey, if you're Aiden Glover, maybe you got a significant amount of NIL to come to Missouri. Obviously, generally speaking, your SEC NIL opportunities are going to dwarf whatever you get at the mid-major or the Division II level. That's pretty obvious here. But on the other hand, from Missouri's perspective, or these types of teams' perspective, the conventional wisdom has been, hey, do you recruit a high school quarterback in every cycle? Does Missouri have to recruit specifically a high school quarterback in 2026? You know what? I want to stay on this topic a little bit more. But first, I do want to tell you this is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting wondering and worrying a bit more? Well, now Taxes is matching you with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates, only an iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. In spring football here for the Tigers, obviously, everybody's eyes are trained to the Bo Pribula-Sam Horn quarterback battle. My money is still on Bo Pribula here, but certainly won't be upset whatsoever if Horn wins the battle. Either way, Missouri at quarterback, well, Horn and Pribula still have 2025 and 2026 of eligibility still left if they want them. Obviously, baseball is a factor in Sam Horn's potential future as well. But with those guys in the fold, also you've got Matt Zollers, one of the highest ranked high school quarterbacks that Missouri has ever signed, probably the highest since Blaine Gabbert, I would say, at least off the top of my head, is Matt Zollers. Well, he's likely to redshirt this season. He'll have 4 more years of eligibility after that. My question is, if you're Missouri, do you absolutely have to take a quarterback in the 2026 cycle? Because it seems to me so far, some of Missouri's highest targets at the position have decided to play ball elsewhere. And with Pribula in probably for the next couple years, it's looking like Horn, yes, in the fold, but I meant to say Matt Zollers, also seemingly your quarterback of the future right now. If you're a high school guy, maybe Missouri, there's no real clear path to playing time here over the next couple years or so, and you've got a real blue chip type guy to compete with already at the young guy spot, so who's 1 year older than you. Maybe that's scaring some guys off. So maybe if you're Missouri, are you just going to add a quarterback just to simply add a quarterback just for depth purposes, only to see that Aiden Glover type of prospect move on after a year? Doesn't seem to me that's necessarily the best use of a roster spot. Maybe there's another position on the roster that could use a little bit of shoring up in the portal in this spring period versus adding a high school quarterback who is unlikely to ever play. In fact, you might be better off going into the portal for a quarterback once again, and for a backup level quarterback. Think a Drew Pine type of player, although at this point in the process, I don't know that Missouri's going to get that quality of a quarterback as Pine was, to be honest with you, but just somebody who isn't looking necessarily to start, but just is looking for a new home, maybe just finds Missouri to be an interesting place for whatever multitude of reasons there could be. My point here is that, once again, the conventional wisdom has been for years, you basically have to recruit at least one high school quarterback in every cycle. But in the new transfer portal environment, and specific to Missouri's quarterback room and the years left that all of those young men have right now, I don't know that Missouri absolutely has to have one in 2026. I'll say this too, it's not just quarterback, but this basic line of thinking, I think, makes sense for a lot of other positions too. I just think especially quarterback because, well, quite simply, it's the one position outside of your specialists like your place kicker and your punter, your long snapper, that type of deal, where really you only play one guy. Nobody ever really rotates. I suppose offensive line, you would put that one in there as well to a slightly lesser extent. But really, other than guys, especially you think about this upcoming season on the Missouri football roster, certainly guys like Donovan Olubade at receiver, Marquise Davis at running back, Javion Hilson on the defensive line, those type of guys are always going to be in demand, those type of true freshmen, because they might actually make an impact in year one. But if there's not at least a path to you playing as a true freshman, well, honestly, you probably are better off going to Bowling Green for a year or two in some cases. Again, especially if you're a quarterback that in the back of your mind, if you think someday, hey, I want to actually play in the NFL, well, once again, your odds are a lot better the more actual real football you're really playing. And speaking of paths to greatness, let's talk about some basketball here for a little bit, because if Missouri is going to be an NCAA tournament team, once again, a 3 out of 4 start, by the way, would be a heck of a start for Dennis Gates, no matter what you say. And in fact, 2 out of 3, which is what Dennis Gates has done in terms of NCAA tournament appearances, well, since Quinn Snyder, only Frank Haith was able to pull it off. So it hasn't been all roses and sunshine the last couple decades for Missouri basketball, especially post Mike Anderson, who, by the way, even old Mike didn't pull off 2 out of 3 in his first run, while his run was really good, obviously. But I think this has to probably be Anthony Robinson and Mark Mitchell's team next year. Mark Mitchell's probably a pretty obvious one, but I think in year 3 here, his junior season for Anthony Robinson, I'm looking for another level to his game, and I think it's there. I think we saw flashes of it as a sophomore. I just think junior season, maybe that's where it gets a little bit more consistent, because that's where true greatness often is overlooked, I think, is in the consistency, because there are a lot of guys who can think about your golf game, right? I'll think about my own golf game. I've got a fairly high upside golf game, but it's also a real low basement as well. In other words, I can shoot 80 on occasion. I can certainly shoot 105 as well. So a little bit more 85 and a little bit less 105 for Anthony Robinson. And I think we'll have the makings of an all-SEC type of player. I really think he still has that upside and that ability within him. And plus, offensively, well, I think Anthony Robinson certainly has the right coaching staff to get the most out of him. And when it just comes to the big picture, I really don't understand the people who are dismissive of Dennis Gates. I really don't. Is it because he lost in those 2 out of 3 NCAA tournament appearances to a double-digit seed twice? Is that it? Because, well, that does ignore that he did beat a double-digit seed, the 7-10 there, Utah State. Heck, they won that game by 15 points. Again, that first season in particular, what exactly were you expecting out of Missouri in the preseason? Because obviously Missouri clearly exceeded expectations that year. It's almost as though it would have been better for Dennis Gates, at least in these people's minds, if Arizona had beaten Princeton that year and the 2-seeded Arizona would have beaten Missouri in the second round. I just think that's a little bit too reductive in my humble opinion. But obviously people are going to have their different opinions about Dennis Gates. I just don't understand how you can be dismissive of the idea that, hey, actually, this still could actually be an excellent era of Missouri basketball here. The people who just think, well, this is the upside. You can only make the tournament and lose in the first couple of rounds. Why would you assume that? If you went back to year 3 of Norm Stewart, for example, I understand wildly different circumstances here. But okay, let's take Mike Anderson. It took him till his 3rd season at Missouri to even make the tournament. So if that's the case, not every trajectory is the same, is my point here. I don't know that it's going to 100% work out for Dennis Gates in Missouri to our wildest fantasies, but I think to just take the stance that nope, it's definitely going to not work out. I just think that ignores a lot of evidence to the contrary at this point. But you know what? Let's talk a little bit more football here on the program, as Jackson Cantwell has given us a few little hints about his recruitment. Let's talk about him and some more hoops as well right after these quick words. So Jackson Cantwell, considered by many to be the top high school player in the entire country, from Nixa, Missouri, offensive lineman, son of Christian Cantwell, former Mizzou shot put great, silver medalist at the 2008 Olympics, all that good stuff. Well, Cantwell appears to be getting closer to his decision maybe than we thought. He tweeted out recently, literally, might be closer to the end than I thought I was. So a decision for the young man could be forthcoming here. Missouri, obviously a big player here, along with Georgia and Oregon, University of Miami, Florida as well, appear to be your top competition there. So I don't have any insight here. We'll just have to see. I've got to think Missouri has a pretty good chance here, but that's some serious competition as well. I will say this, if Courtney Crutchfield and Keywan Lacey have taught us anything, hey, Jackson, just go out there. Get the biggest bag you possibly can for one season, and then come back when you're really ready to crush it on the Missouri football field in 2026 for the Tigers. I'm kidding, by the way. Please commit here. But, when it comes to the rest of Missouri football recruiting, running back target Ryan Estrada, this is from Sean Williams at 24/7 Sports, is the latest to set an official visit with Missouri. Rushed for more than 2,400 yards and 32 touchdowns during his junior season. So not quite Derrick Henry level high school numbers, but still 32 touchdowns and 2,400 yards is definitely eye-popping. That is for darn sure. And I got to say, one thing that has been bothering me just a tiny bit here lately, probably a stupid pet peeve of mine, but people who are making real big distinctions between guards and wings off the ball, for example, these days. I just got to say, the way that basketball is played in 2025, I think some people need to update their scripts just a little bit, because in an era where almost at all times there are four guys hanging around the three-point line, if not five guys playing five-out basketball around the three-point line, as Missouri has often done the last few years. Well, to me, then the 2 through the 4 are basically meaningless as far as position designations go, especially when, again, on the perimeter, those guys are switching those ball screens often. What does it even matter? The 2 through the 2, the 3, the 4, the shooting guard, the small forward, the power forward. There really are no power forwards anymore. For the most part, I would say Mark Mitchell is much closer to a traditional power forward than a lot of college basketball teams play these days. But even he spends a decent amount of time hanging around the three-point line, especially if Josh Gray is in the game, for example, than certainly Doug Smith did back in the day, for example. So I just think sometimes people get a little bit caught up in, well, we need a wing versus more of a shooting guard, that type of thing. What Missouri needs on the perimeter, in my opinion, 2, 3, 4, they need two-way players. Yeah, it'd be nice if they were 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", each one of them. Hopefully they're at least 6'3" or 6'4". I think that, along with the reported price for Kyan Evans being north of $1 million to go to North Carolina, may have scared Missouri off a little bit, but I also think his size was maybe not the best fit for Missouri, and especially at that price as well. So to me, if you're Missouri, look at two-way players. I think that's why Sebastian Mack is a good fit. Regardless if he's a 2 or a 3, those designations don't really mean a whole lot to me in 2025 basketball. But you know what does mean a lot to me? All of you joining me here on the program today. Really appreciate it, as per usual, and you making this your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez on Locked On the NFL Draft. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. So until next time, again, I'm planning on having a very fun interview this afternoon. Gonna run it on Monday with a former great Missouri player. This should be a lot of fun. Hopefully you all will enjoy it as well. I'll see you Monday right here on Locked On Mizzou.